I think there's an age, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what age it is. I have no idea. The truth is, I have no idea. It's crucial to start addressing this since they are young, because many girls grow up facing these consequences without clearly knowing what's happening to their bodies. But why does this happen? Because they don't talk about it at school.
No, it's not explained.
Because the teachers are not trained on this.
Many of them don't even know what mutilation is.
That's why it's very important to include this into sex education, the little education that is provided.
Yes.
Because I think it's something that's only started now. 50 years ago, such conversations were rare in school or elsewhere about orgasms, about the clitoris, or I don't know what else. Here in Spain, I'm not talking about Africa,
here,
where it's
they haven't
often
talked
said,
about it
they
either,
don't talk
because
about sex
I went
there.
to school and they never
They
talked
don't
to me
know
about
anything
sex.
about it there. Exactly. It was taboo here too.
Exactly.
But the thing is, this is changing. Society is changing. Female genital mutilation is a reality, our reality, and the reality of
Exactly.
many girls in the classes. So it has to be included, doesn't it? I think so.
Because the issue of female genital mutilation, unlike the issue of sexuality, which concerns all of us,
Yes.
female genital mutilation, no. So when we talk about something that the teachers don't know much about, we talk about it in a classroom where there are girls or teenagers who have suffered it or who are likely to suffer it.
And others who have not.
Furthermore, when we discuss it, it often comes from a Western standpoint, criminalizing the issue and emphasizing its brutality. I can't help but think about how a young woman feels, or who has suffered it, or who lives in a high-risk environment of suffering it, right? I mean, the teacher, while explaining it, often does so from a position of ideological or moral superiority, portraying the affected families, their context, and their culture as primitive in the eyes of the rest of the class and their classmates.
It's just outrageous, whether you like it or not.
It's just that,
You have to be careful.
yes, you have to be very careful about how,
It's a double-edged sword.
exactly, how the subject is dealt with.
Okay.
So, it has to be addressed? Yes. Should we talk about sexuality in the classroom? Yes, of course. Should the issue of genital mutilation be included in the classroom? Look.
Consider that girl already feeling different from her classmates, especially in the context of a complex subject like sexuality, which is already challenging to discuss with her friend. Imagine adding the burden of having been mutilated. Okay? Because children, let's get to the point that children are very cruel.
Yeah, we know that. We know that.
I think you're forgetting for a second that this difference, in my opinion, already exists.
Exactly.
She's already different because she's black and because she's African.
So add this on top of that.
Okay, so add it.
You're going to make things more complicated for that girl.
Just add it. I consider.
Do you understand? I'm not saying to explain it to her when she's 20, okay? Because maybe they've already gone through a stage of this, but you have to be very careful how you address this issue, when and where.
Exactly, I think that...
Okay, girls, I've talked to some women actually, and it's quite traumatic. Women, and I mean 25, 26, 27, right? I'm not referring to individuals beyond their 50s, but who spent a significant part of their sexual lives engaging in sexual activity without fully experiencing, how should I express it? The consequences, right? The pleasure of it. So many infections. They really thought it was something wrong with them. It's essential to consider all these psychological consequences, to spend years and years and years fighting against yourself.
Not knowing why.
Due to consequences that you don't know where they came
why
from.
You have infections.
It's just that it's so hard.
You don't know why this is happening to you. It happens to me. You don't know. And why would it really help me if they told me now? Well, I would have preferred to have been told since I was a little girl, to know where I'm going to go.
I'm sure. I insist. It's my own idea.
Yes, each one.
But I'm pretty sure, really, if there was a survey, a poll, and the question would be that you prefer to ignore it, and ignore FGM, not knowing if you've been through it or not, or face the consequences and try and do something.
Exactly.
I'm sure it's more the latter than the former.
Exactly.
But you really
And
have to take
same
this into
here. I feel
account.
the
That
same
girl,
way,
yes,
eh?
she's different. She's black. She's already condemned by society itself. She's already segregated from the class, isn't she? That's a
But
fact.
you are helping, you know?
We have all experienced it, and many are experiencing it. But it's crucial to provide psychological support. Teachers should understand why a girl frequently asks to leave the classroom to go pee. That has to be talked about. The girl should feel comfortable approaching the teacher and say, "Can I go to the toilet?" but without concealing the reasons behind it, even if she's uncertain about the underlying cause, I think.
When referring to that it was a complex subject to introduce, just like that, in an ordinary classroom, and that it should be done by a teacher, I didn't agree with that because you have neither the knowledge, nor the training, nor the competence.
It has to be provided.
Nor the necessary sensitivity to be able to do it, so I don't agree. But I do think it should be included. But it should be included by professionals who know and are familiar with the situation.
Yes, I agree with you.
I mean, in the same way as many of those workshops that are held in sex education institutes, which in the end is not sex education, it's education for the prevention of sexual diseases.
Exactly.
That's the training you are given in school.
About condoms only.
Speaking as a secondary school teacher, I talk about sexuality with my students because I consider that I have the necessary authority and knowledge to do so, despite it not being my subject. But I know most of my professional colleagues may not be suitable to talk, not about sexuality, but about mutilation in the classroom. I mean, they have a strong biased view of absolutely everything. This Western moral superiority, when dealing with any subject that doesn't affect people's lives, as much as this one does, with prejudices, stereotypes, and stigmas against migrant and racialized communities in all areas outside of this one. If you are an express racist, that is, if you are openly, if you are, of course,
Yes.
I wouldn't allow these kinds of people to have the option to offer this training, because it's not going to help.
But they can be taught too. They can learn.
I mean, it's not going to help. Why? Because it's going to help contribute to the stigma and the stigmatization of culture, of young women, and so on. Because this is going to result in the rest of the girls saying, "Oh, your parents are wild."
Exactly.
I don't know what about your family. I don't know how many of you practice this in your tribe. And I don't see it the way you were saying this, saying, well, she already has a stigma. She's already different because she is black. She's already, I don't know what. No, let's not make that mistake. That's just adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly.
It's already a significant challenge to be the only black girl in the class, in the school, the target of insults, discrimination from teachers, and bullying, the one who receives I don't know what, and on top of all this, to all the cocktail that you already have, don't you? When, above all, during adolescence, a time when you're developing your personality and grappling with identity issues. You were born here, yet you're black. But neither black nor white communities fully accept you as one of their own. And then add to that the whole process of development, personality development, identity crisis, racism, bullying, I don't know what. Racism in the whole society. Now add being labelled differently by others.
They point at you.
Because this information has also been poorly disseminated, with the stigma and stereotypes. To be labelled as a mutilated person on top of it all? In other words, then we will have a whole flood of young black or racialized girls who commit suicide.
Exactly.
Because ultimately, we're facing a very serious situation of mental health problems among teenagers, with teen suicide now being the foremost cause of mortality in this demographic. In other words, it's the leading cause of youth mortality. It's crucial not to exacerbate this problem further and increase the mental health risks for young people. Additionally, as you mentioned earlier, this psychological support. How many psychologists or mental health professionals are trained or specialized in non-white backgrounds?
None or very few.
Well, if you add female genital mutilation on top of that, they don't have a fucking clue.
Not a fucking clue.
So how are they going to help us?
Okay, but...
So we make the fire much, much bigger. And what we're going to do is contribute to having people with identity problems, with racism problems, with problems, I don't belong in this world and I want to die and it's all fucking shit. And on top of that, right, with the label and the stigma of all of this, on top of that, the mutilation and the label of having been mutilated.
Mutilated.
I mean, no. I mean, a person...
You end up with that person.
We can't increase the harm suffered by an adolescent girl for the sake of of having the information. Should we have the information? Yes.
Yes.
But I even think that safe spaces should be created, just as in the feminist movement. Feminist gatherings are set up where only women attend and participate.
Yeah, that's right. Women.
And there are self-defense trainings only for women. Why is there no training?
Special training.
Only for people, for young African or Afro-descendant women in that respect. Why don't we create these safe spaces free of stigmas and labels from white people who come in and judge about something that is not their business? I'm in favor of this kind of training and not aggravating the problem.
Exactly.
And further damage the mental health of our young people.
I believe that one of the hardest things I'll ever face in my life is to guide a person who has held deep-seated prejudices and a particular mindset for many years to recognise that there is an alternative reality, that this girl who's in your class thinks differently, is suffering consequences that you are completely unaware of, and makes you sit down and try to do something for this girl.
Because that...
I think the hardest thing we're going to have to do as activists, but we have to do it. We cannot ignore it. Change is within our community, and I totally agree with what you say. We have to make the change. But we're not alone here. We are not alone in this. In Catalonia, we live with other people. There are many professionals who are dealing with this.
And they also have to fit in.
These professionals should possess the necessary knowledge, and they should stand on our side. It's a reality, and they can't handle it alone, and we can't address it in isolation. We have more insight into the consequences and, of course, a better understanding of our community due to our experiences. But it's our role as activists, I think, so there's a lot of work to be done. And, of course, this girl is going to have a very hard time because she's been having a very hard time since she was 3 years old, when she was mutilated. Do you know what I mean?
But we have to take reality into account. And reality includes different realities, right? You have to take into account the reality of the classroom. You can't simplify...
Only to one student.
No, the argument of, well, you talk to him and tell him not to commit suicide. No.
No, not at
Well,
all.
but that's simplifying it to the highest possible degree.
No. Yes.
It's not as simple as that.
No, of course not.
So, all the variables should be taken into account. And you have to take into account what a racialized student goes through in a classroom, in a community, or in a country, or in a city, right? Predominantly white.
Information and training.
Right, where the population is hegemonically white.
Exactly.
And where you are a minority. And if on top of being a minority and all the stigmas that I mentioned before, you are adding up taking crap, shit, right? You're adding shit on top of that. What you're doing is dragging that person down even further and making the process even more difficult for that person.
I think it's empowering rather than sinking.
No, you are not
You're
empowering
sinking
that
that person.
Girls should be empowered.
You are not empowering them at all. You are definitely not empowering them.
It all depends on the person.
I mean, I've seen it from both perspectives. I've seen it as a student and as a teacher. I've been the only black girl in a school. I know what it feels like to suffer bullying in a school, to have an identity crisis. And I know what it's like not to belong, not to know where you do belong. And I know what it's like not to fit into society.
Exactly.
That's what should be avoided.
I have personal experience living with constant racism. And when you layer on additional stigmas, I have also been a foster child, a minor under the care of the authorities, another label on top of that. Then add to that all these stigmas that are being imposed on you, right? All around you and your classmates. Plus comes the typical white teacher who talks about Africa as a country.
Exactly.
And says, today we're going to talk about Africa, I don't know what, I don't know how many. And black people and flies and starving children and I don't know how many. And today we're going to talk about sexuality because, of course, here in the classroom there is diversity. There are black students. Maybe some have suffered from it, and some of them are likely to suffer from
Well, if you just say things like that...
And therefore...
But that is the reality.
That's what should be
That's what
avoided.
should be
You have to give
avoided.
information, train and provide tools.
That's how it's going to be addressed.
But it should be avoided.
No.
Uma, look, let me explain.
Let's see, we're overlapping, and that's where I end. But what you are proposing is going to be like that. That's how it's going to be.
Exactly.
And I say that because I'm a teacher.
Well, we should avoid this.
And I'm aware of the benefits and the consequences. The competences and the non-competences. The issue at hand is that teachers are trained in a subject. For instance, as an English teacher, if I were suddenly tasked with teaching the biology of I don't know what and talk about the sex of starfish, what could I do? I'm going to read this and I'm going to talk nonsense about I don't know what. Teacher training is a maximum of 30 hours. In 30 hours, I'm talking about 2, 3, 4, 5, a maximum of 30 hours. In 30 hours, a teacher who already carries a backpack full of prejudices and racism,
Exactly.
they're going to eradicate racism. They're going to eradicate prejudice against all communities. They're going to learn about female genital mutilation. They're going to have all the skills and knowledge about sexuality. And on top of that, they're going to be able to teach this in a classroom. Well, that's not going to happen.
It's complicated.
It's not going to happen because it doesn't really exist. So therefore, all your proposal does is put, as I said before,
More firewood.
I believe.
more shit to be thrown on the back of the person who is suffering this. Because the teaching reality is this. Each teacher is responsible for their own subject. And you have acquired your competencies during 5 years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of education. And a training course on female genital mutilation will be a training course of between 5 and 30 hours maximum. And that does not provide you with the necessary skills and knowledge to be able to teach and provide training and, let's say, information in a classroom with all the safeguards. And therefore, this is why I'm against this proposal.
Exactly.
Young African and Afro-descendant women who have experienced or may face genital mutilation require access to comprehensive training and information, along with the necessary tools for support. Should teachers be tasked with this responsibility? No. Because I know how the teaching profession works and the training they are going to be given. And I know the limitations of teacher training, and it's highly unlikely they would receive the adequate expertise required for such a task. The responsibility should fall on professionals, activists or professional activists, who are knowledgeable about the subject and have the experience they need.
Yes.
The individuals who can provide that training and ensure its effectiveness are professionals with expertise in the field. These experts can educate the entire classroom, 3 classes, 5 classes, or the whole school. They possess the necessary knowledge, unlike teachers who are ill-equipped for this task. Entrusting teachers would aggravate the problem.
Why did nobody tell me anything about genital mutilation until I was 25 years old?
Why don't I have the psychological support I need?